So anyway, we shall get started. Welcome to the Azeroth review. Particular welcome to anyone who is new to these. Say hi if you are. This is basically just to discuss anything World of Warcraft related. Anything goes basically for a couple of hours. And I'll just run through what are the new things that we could potentially be talking about this week. Because there is actually some news. I can actually do a WoW Flash again for like the first time in 3 weeks. Hi, Nefestra. So we've got, I suppose, Legendaries is the big thing. That we've got the Waking Essence. And not only that, I mean, that popped up at the weekend. We had a chat about that on the Saturday stream, actually. But they've also said, which is, I think, quite a good idea. Because when they first of all announced this Waking Essence and it was going to cost 175, I thought, that's a bit much. Because I've been thinking for a long time, as soon as people who've been playing Legion since the start had all the legendaries they need for their spec, at that point, Blizzard shouldn't really be making it take too long to get your legendaries for new players or re-rollers. So I thought, I mean, I've said before that maybe you should just get a guaranteed one from your Mythic cache every week. So all you have to do is do a Mythic Plus dungeon, you know, even if it's just a +2, just get a cache the next week. And you get a legendary guaranteed. Okay, it might not be the one you want, but it's a guaranteed one. And then, but there's nothing on. Then they bring the Waking Essence. Good idea. It could have been done. We could have done with it sooner, or not we personally, but you know, re-rollers and new players could have done with it sooner. But then I saw 175. I thought, well, that's quite a lot. But they've said that they're going to increase the amount of Waking Essence you get with the new patch. And make things cost a bit more. So maybe that's what the 175 is about. That's actually a good idea. I quite like that. So it means people won't stockpile and just be able to get loads of legendaries. Although I'm not in support of that because I think people should have been able to get these legendaries for a long time. But it does mean that in actual fact, in real terms, it's not actually costing 175, is it? It'll effectively be costing less because we're going to get more Waking Essence for doing the same content. So let's have a look. Watched a YouTube video early. Someone predicting patch 7.3.5 will be released in the next 2 or 3 weeks because of Wrath Time Walking being on the 24th of January. Ulduar Time Walking coming in 7.3.5. Right. There is a potential reason to suppose the patch might be soon, but I wouldn't say that was it because bearing in mind when the patch came out for Black Temple Time Walking, we didn't actually get to do it for a very long time. So a TBC Time Walking came and went. So it was actually months before that came in. So I don't think that'll be an issue. But people have noted that, hi Lays, that the Call of the Scarab is in a couple of weeks or something, isn't it? And with the Silithus scenario being with 7.3.5, that maybe they'd like to bring it out in time for that. Now, I don't subscribe to that either because although Silithus is very much associated with that Scaraby thing, obviously Call of the Scarab takes place there, the scenario doesn't have anything to do with Old Gods, really, as far as I can tell. It's really just to do with the sword that's stuck in there. So, yeah, I don't subscribe to that either. The bottom line is, if I have a look at my BattleNet, and if I go to PTR, it's not a final version. We're not downloading anything in the background launcher for it. So there's no evidence whatsoever that it is imminent at all. Now, of course, that thing could suddenly, you know, be a... Oh, what do they call it when they put the final version of the PTR on? The final patch. I've completely forgotten what it's called. But it looks a bit different anyway. So... you always get a bit of an inkling of when it's actually coming out just based on that. And there's nothing. So, yeah. I mean, it might still be out by the end of the month. I'm not saying it's not. It's just, at the moment, we don't have any evidence it's going to be. What if the pre-expansion event is a new Call of the Scarab event? Which would be why there's new mounts, Call of the Scarab assets. Possibly. I mean, it does look like they've been putting stuff into the game code very early on this expansion. If you know, think about it this way, like allied racers, we're going to get 4 allied racers with 7.3.5 is now, you know, what we're looking at, isn't it? As far as we can tell anyway. Again, I don't think they're on the PTR yet, but it sort of looks like they're coming. But it's 4 of the 6. Now, when we came to... Now, we knew that there was going to be 4, and which 4 it's going to be, because there was some information data mined. And then BlizzCon was announced, and there were 6 allied races. Now, where the 4 comes in is because we're going to get 4 in this expansion, not in BFA. There's going to be another 2 for that. And that was a long time ago, long before they were getting ready to put it in. So it looks like they're putting stuff into the code quite early on. So again, yeah, the stuff with the Call of the Scarab assets could well be intended for, you know, a pre-expansion event, as you say, because we don't know where that's going to be centered on, do we? I'd quite like them to do. You would think they're going to do something global again, like they did, because they said with the pre-Legion invasions that took place all over Azeroth, that they'd like to do that sort of thing. Well, I say all over Azeroth, Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. Did we get any on Pandora and Northrend? I don't think we did. But they said they like that sort of thing. So it would seem odd to me if they don't do something similar as an event, you know, again, in more zones than just Silithus. We knew because Blizzard let us or wanted us to know. If they don't want something, they can keep it locked behind iron gates. Absolutely they can. But there is an argument for it being a mistake still. I absolutely agree. Like, the arguments for it not being a mistake, for it being deliberate, are that this sort of leak has never really happened before. You know, they have been pretty good. When they want to keep something secret, they keep it secret. But Legion's a little bit different. Because, first of all, you've got this 2-team thing going on with stuff supposedly being developed in parallel. And with Legion, you can imagine the teams have had very tight deadlines to meet. And, you know, because normally they bring stuff out when it's ready. If it's not ready, they just don't bring it out. Sometimes not ever, sometimes a lot later. Whereas now it's like they've clearly been given instructions that you're bringing this out then, and you're bringing this out then. And maybe that's made them a little bit sloppy, you know, with a bit of overwork maybe. So either is possible. I don't know whether it was deliberate. My gut instinct tells me it's not their usual practice to do stuff like this. Of course, different people can come in and do different things. So yeah, I don't know. But my gut tells me it probably was more likely to be a mistake. But it may not be. You feel as if data mine is just a PR marketing thing to get people hyped. It's here. Well, sometimes you see they caution against it simply because occasionally something is data mined that's not actually intended to go out or not intended to go out as it is. I mean, in terms of marketing, the best marketing they've come up with in the last year or two is doing Q&As. Just getting Ian Hazakostas or someone else, you know, stuck in a broom cupboard with lore and just talking about stuff. You know, that's the best hype you can get. And of course, you know, something like World of Warcraft benefits from having a whole host of big streamers who, you know, they'll also give interviews to and stuff like that. They've done more of that recently. That sort of stuff works well as well. I'm not sure why they don't maybe do more of that. Maybe I still get the impression they don't really like doing proper interviews. I get that strong impression that there's still a lot of stuff they like to keep to themselves, especially if they seem very concerned with not saying something unless they're sure that's how it's going to come out, because they feel they've been bitten on the arse before. Like Warlords of Draenor, classic example, because they announced a number of features for Warlords of Draenor, and then when they weren't forthcoming, they tried to backtrack by saying, oh, we never said they'd be in, we were just, you know, spitballing, blah, 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 when they did say they were going to be in. And they felt that, in fact, I think they said as much, oh, we should be careful not to say anything unless we're sure it's coming out, because people will take it the wrong way or beat us if it doesn't come out. So, yeah, but in terms of whether it's actually Whether it was deliberate or not, we possibly will never know, unless it's maybe years down the line and someone feels they can tell us after all. Maybe then, not until. But, again, I still note that I haven't seen them say anything about what's coming in 2018, content-wise, which I still find a little bit bizarre. Hi, Pikachu, I'm fine, thank you. I find it very odd, because like when I'm looking through Twitter, I see other games companies. Not all games, of course, have got new content coming out this year, so those games companies are also fairly quiet. But I see other games companies that are talking about what's coming in 2018. In fact, I'm just looking at one for Elder Scrolls Online now. But I've seen a few others as well. All, they're falling over themselves to say what's coming. And Blizzard, I'm thinking, what's coming in 2018? I don't know. Battle for Azeroth beta seems to be, at the moment, the highlight of the year. I'm sure that's not true. And, presumably by the end of the year, maybe Battle for Azeroth itself. Hopefully. But for most of the year, I don't know what's coming. The only content we know is coming. Allied Races. That's like a few quests. If you've done the achievements. The mailbox game. Looking forward to that. Quite like the lack of that. But that's just a bit of light relief. What content is there? What's coming? Don't know. I don't know. I don't know why they're not hyping this year. I don't get it. So again, excuse me, going back to their marketing strategies, I don't think they really have very effective ones. Because there's still nothing. I'm seeing nothing at all being talked about. The most exciting thing at the moment is the being able to buy legendary tokens. Oh, yeah, it says there almost has to be another raid coming. Maybe that's what they're keeping quiet now. I absolutely am certain there's got to be another raid coming. But, raid or not, where does the story go after Antorus? Like, we've already, I mean, most of us now will, if you want to anyway, not everyone wants to, will have killed Argus on some mode or other. So most of us, story-wise, have done and we're up to date. Now, we're not saying we need a new raid right now. Obviously, we don't. We're months away before we're finished with Antorus. But story-wise, it's at least nice to know what's coming. They've certainly told us in the past what's coming. Would I have a guess when the new raid is coming out? Oh, yeah, I can absolutely guess that. Because Blizzard themselves, like Ian Hazacostas says, a tier should last 4 to 5 months. So that would suggest round about Easter, maybe a bit after Easter. April-ish, something like that. So that's when you'd expect it to come out. But a long time before you'd expect it to come out, you would expect it to be on the PTR. Now, I suppose, because 7.3.5 isn't, maybe the delay is just purely and simply because, it's been quite famous that there have been 11-week gaps between each content patch, this expansion. That changed with, the gap between 7.3 and 7.3.5 will have been much greater. We still don't know when 7.3.5 is coming out. And maybe it's just that they don't want to say anything about 7.4 until 7.3.5 has come out. So 7.3.5 comes out. Then they do a Q&A where they talk about 7.3.5, but also what's coming in 7.4. Then they say in a couple of weeks' time, 7.4 PTR will be going online. I mean, that's another reason why potentially I think that the 7.3.5 patch probably shouldn't be that far away from launch, even though we're not seeing anything, just because we're starved of information of what's coming at the moment. They've done so well in Legion to be saying, right, we're giving you, here you go, some content, some more content, some more content, more content. Here you go. And now it's like, it's not just, we don't need any content right now, but we don't even know what's coming. Because 7.3.5, although it's very exciting about, zone scaling and allied races and the legendary tokens, it's not content, really. It's just like a change in the game. Do I think there will be or need to be a classic WoW beta? I've heard a lot of people talk about how people want it, but nothing on it if they think there's going to be a beta. That's an interesting question. I don't think there needs to be a beta. What I do think there needs to be is a consultation process, though. They just need to describe how they're intending to do it, not to have a beta. No need for that. But they should have a consultation on how they're intending to bring it out. Because there are questions that have to be asked. There's a number of things that are going to make the experience different regardless. Like one thing I would think they'd want to avoid is changing talents and abilities through the expansion. Like there were certain talents that changed throughout the expansion. There were certain abilities that changed. I mean, Paladins had quite a lot of changes. I imagine other classes did too. I would think they'd want to just have a consistent one. So where did it want to be pitched? Sorry, got a bit of a cold coming in. Hypothetical. If all racials were made purely cosmetic and all costs of server transfers and faction changes were removed, would Mythic Raiders see a 50-50 faction split after long enough time? I don't think so, because I think when it comes down to it, a lot of players don't really care about faction. You know, I mean, I do. I associate very much with Alliance. I didn't really like being Horde. I would resist. I'm not saying I wouldn't go Horde. I would absolutely go Horde if I, had to. But I would resist quite strongly. If I had any sort of sensible option to stay Alliance, I would do. But the thing is, there's no likelihood that, Horde would just go Alliance even if it was free. Because the perception is still always, even if they balance them, the perception would still be that Horde are better because you see more Horde. That's why I think now it's impossible to do anything other than just allow Horde and Alliance players to do PvE together. Could they actually keep the racials and buff racials to put them on par with one another? Again, it makes no... The problem is as well, I mean, some people were pointing out, it's not just... When I was simming them to see the difference, those sims were just based on, like, DPS output. Because that's all I can sim. But some of them have utility benefit. And there's some, Alliance ones that have got good utility. But Horde ones tend to be, more useful for that. And again, it's... judging the worth of utility, which Blizzard are not very good at, it has to be said. The amount of times they will argue that A is as good as B in terms of utility abilities when it clearly isn't. So I don't even trust them to be able to judge that. But it makes no difference. Let's say they did. Let's say they balanced it perfectly. The perception wouldn't change. That perception is now ingrained. You're disappointed Alliance races have set factions, especially since they seem to have good racials. Well, the Horde ones do too. Do you think we'll get some that can join either in the future? I hope that, I think race and faction should be a cosmetic choice. Like, you should choose your faction based on which storylines you prefer. And you should base your race just on which character you like the look of most. Now, I'm not saying World of Warcraft's the only MMO where race makes a difference. I mean, the other one I say is hold up as a good example of an MMO is, WoW obviously is still a good example of an MMO. But Elder Scrolls Online, race matters a lot in that as well. In fact, I just came to a bit of an epiphany recently. I just realised how stupid I was being, because the race I chose for my main character on ESO is not suitable for the type of play style I want. So I was thinking, well, I'll just level up another one, that's fine. And then I was just thinking, well, I could just race change it, actually. That would work too. Because you can, I've got enough crowns, like the currency, on the online store to just get a race change. I should just do that. So next time I sit down to have a proper play of it, I think that's what I'll do. But at the same time, you sometimes get MMOs where the race doesn't matter that much. Lord of the Rings Online, I think it matters a little bit, but I wouldn't go mad. It's not massively. Star Wars: The Republic makes no bloody difference at all. It's purely cosmetic. Should remove racials. I don't think they'll ever get away with that. I don't mind racials if they're cosmetic. But, I mean, they're clearly not going to anyway. It's like pissing in the wind. Or, trying to argue for that because they're not going to do it. The fact that they've put powerful racials on the new races, they're not going to do it. With PvP, you can do a mercenary queue that queues for the other faction. Yeah, I think that came in WoD, didn't it? Could they work with that to blend the factions together? I don't think they should even do that. I think they should just straight up make it so that faction is not a thing in PvE. So faction, it's like, you can queue up with whoever you want. You can join guilds with whoever you want. You can do dungeons, raids with whoever you want. Whatever character they've rolled. As long as it's, they can still keep the server thing if they want. But you can't queue up with any old person for, say, a battleground or arena even. Even though arena, you can have alliance v alliance, I would still just say for PvP, what faction matters. You'll work with people in your same faction. So I would go with that. Well, allied races, the same thing, really. There are storyline reasons. In fact, you could argue the allied races have a much stronger reason to belong to a faction than the races we have now. Because they belong to factions. Like the High Mountain Tauren are High Mountain Tauren. Now, you could argue they should go to either side. Because do you know what? I've been helping the High Mountain Tauren out. Ungrateful bastards going over to Horde. And we've all been helping the Nightborn. Same bloody thing. But Void Elves trained by Illyria. Okay, she's Alliance. She doesn't like Horde. Okay, she's not like, Khadgar, who will sort of go, well, you've both got good people. She just hates the Horde. So Void Elves wouldn't make that much sense as Horde, even though as I say, I would like it if races could just be wherever. But storyline-wise, that would be a harder sell. Dark Iron Dwarf, same thing. It's very much in the Alliance. Lightforged Draenei, again, same thing, because, Velen's people. So, ironically, the Alliance allied races, you could sort of see how, storyline-wise, you can make an argument for them being fixed to a faction. The Horde ones, obviously Zandalari Trolls you can, because even though we haven't met them yet, it's the Horde that's going to make friends with those. But, High Mountain Tauren and Nightborn, we've both been helping them out. Void Elves seem more like a class than a race. Well, possibly. In the same way that Demon Hunters are a class and they were trained by Illidan, Void Elves have been trained by Illyria. Yes, you could see that, but they're not. You doubt the faction v faction theme will last the whole expansion. I think it will shift more to old god orientated battle for Azeroth being the Titan, not the planet per se. Possibly, it may well do. I'm certainly expecting old god stuff. I'm surprised it wasn't a bigger theme, because it wasn't. Old gods weren't really mentioned at all, which actually surprised me because I thought it would be a major theme. So maybe it's not. Maybe it's going to be a theme for a tier, say, something like that. Maybe the middle tier. Because I don't at the moment really know what the general theme is. It's all right saying the main theme is just the World of Warcraft, the faction battle. They've said that before. And it hasn't quite worked out. Allied race is basically just an excuse to give Blood Elves to Alliance and Night Elves to the Horde. I don't think the Nightborn look too much like Night Elves. Interested to see if allied races will be coming in the next expansion, though. If more of them, well, there is scope, of course, for more to be done. Whether, I mean, it might be that they're planning some for later on in the expansion, certainly. And the fact that we're getting some now, and we're not having to wait for Battle for Azeroth to get some of them at least, does suggest that it's the sort of content they consider to be fine to bring out mid-expansion and not partway through. Is there not a new class? No. Why do we want new class? God almighty, we haven't got room for even as many classes as we have now. The first raid in BFA, Old Gods themed, a little bit, yeah. Ashara and Old Gods here. But they haven't mentioned anything storyline-wise, is what I mean. So, I mean, think about it this way. The first raid in Legion was Emerald Nightmare. Does that mean the Emerald Nightmare was a particular theme at the start of Legion? Didn't seem to be. It was a theme of half a zone. A little bit of Val Shirar was Emerald Nightmare, and then we had a raid for it and a dungeon, and that was about it. So I didn't really consider it a major theme in terms of the storyline. Probably talked about this before, but lore-wise, do Zandalari Paladins make sense? I don't think so, but, you know, it's very difficult to say definitively not, especially as people have pointed out, unless it's changed, I haven't been keeping tabs on it, that they have a racial that does like holy damage. That obviously throws things into a certain amount of confusion. But I associate them with death magic, and which is not a polar opposite of light by any means. You know, the whole point of all forms of magic apart from light and shadow is it's supposed to be a mixture of the two, you know. So, but, you know, I sort of see paladins as being purely of light. You know, they only use the light. And they don't use anything with void in it, which death magic does. So, but I can't think of, I can't say absolutely not, that would be ridiculous. It's not on gnome paladins level of silliness. And it would be, but I still, no, I just don't, it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right. Has it been confirmed that at least some of the new races will be available to play prior to BFA? I think they're coming in 7.3.5. I only say think, because again, we haven't had a lot of definite information. But, again, it would make sense, because, think about it this way. When we were data mining the information, we only data mined 4 of the allied races. So we data mined High Mountain Tauren, Nightborn, Lightforged Draenei, and damn it, what's the other one? Forgotten now. Void Elves, sorry, Void Elves. So, and then we're also getting information, data mined, about the, well, from the PTR, I should say, about the achievements needed for those 4. Okay, so that suggests to me that they're coming in 7.3.5. Even though, as far as I know, and I haven't checked recently since the last update, the ones, I don't think they're available to play yet on the PTR. So it could well be, but it seems strange to me that they keep updating information about them on the PTR. So I think they're coming very soon. I think they're coming with 7.3.5. It's just that, as far as I know, they haven't definitively said that they are. Which, again, seems a bit strange to me. But the other 2 will come at BFA. Obviously, Zandalari Trolls can't come out pre-BFA, because we're not going to go to Zandalar until Battle for Azeroth. Dark Iron Dwarves, in theory, you could, but obviously they're going to keep it the same. You know, Zandalari Trolls aren't going to come out before BFA. Then the 3rd Alliance one won't come out either. Why do we need new races? Well, need is a strong word, but variety is... The thing is, people like customization. In any role-playing game, customizing your character is a really positive experience. There is very little customization possible in World of Warcraft. It's pretty poor. So, the fact, you know, having more races compensates for the fact that we have relatively little control over what our characters look like in other regards. Like, there's very limited options for a particular race in terms of what it looks like. There's a whole host of restrictions. Even though transmog has been a thing in WoW for a few years now, it's the most restrictive transmog that I think I have come across in an MMO that allows it in the first place. Now, I've played a couple of MMOs that didn't have it in any form. But in terms of the ones that do, World of Warcraft has the most restrictions on it. Like, I, as a plate wearer, cannot just dress up in, like, a hooded cloak and leather jerkin or something like that. Because I'm a plate wearer, I have to just transmog to plate gear. And as I say, the range of looks for your character is very limited as well. Oh, excuse me, Gordon Bennett. Sorry. Ah. I hope my students aren't giving me any horrible germs. If the storylines for the first 4 races is fairly short, couldn't they just do internal tests of release without putting it on the PTR? I don't see the point in releasing any content, even short content, without putting it on the PTR. On the subject of transmog, I'd almost be willing to put real money down to unlock transmogs from prior expansion content. Getting tired of running Ulduar for weeks on end, trying to get one piece. You'd almost be willing to put real money down. No, I think if something exists in the game cosmetically, it should probably just exist in the game. But I mean, I've said before, I'm perfectly happy to support the idea of cosmetic gear on the online store. I don't think they should. I mean, the thing is, I think one thing that might put a lot of people off with that. It's quite expensive, the stuff. The small amount of stuff you can get on the online store compared to what similar items cost in other games, it's very expensive on WoW. They should just do more stuff and charge less for it. Most MMO don't have different armors. They may well not know. I mean, I can only speak about the ones I've played. Hang on a minute, where's my... Oh, there it is. New races make the new leveling experience a little more fun. Yes, this is true. You know, with... It would be nice to do the level scaling, the zone scaling leveling, and it would add a little bit of spice to do it on one of the allied races because it is at least new. Okay, so I'd be in support of that, absolutely. Cosmetic changes. Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with cosmetic changes in terms of microtransactions. I still think there needs to be some responsibility with microtransactions, though. I'm not in favour of loot crates because of the, you know, it preys on the same sort of bits of your brain that are, you know, excited by gambling. It's too similar to gambling for me. Which means either, but then I see that as an issue that government should take. It'd be nice if we could expect the games developers to take a moral high point there, but, you know, they often don't. Well, most people have max zoom and only really see that in on login page, but I suppose everyone plays the game for certain reasons. I have it on max zoom, you know, when I'm raiding and stuff like that, but I still like to know that for someone who's not got max zoom, that I look cool. You can transmog to different armor types in ESO. You can transmog, yes, you can. Well, you also get like costumes as well in ESO. So you've got a lot of scope with that as well. So you don't just have to transmog like armor. You can transmog costumes. And the other thing as well is you've got a lot of, you've got dyes in the game basically. So you can do recolors of them quite a lot. Annoys you with the transmog is the restrictions on a plate wearer not being able to collect cloth or leather, etc. gear for transmog for other characters. Yes, I mean, that's another restriction, that even if they don't allow you as a plate wearer to transmog cloth, yeah, the fact that you could still obtain cloth. Yeah, that seems a bit harsh, I have to say, yeah. For other characters. I mean, for me, I'd even go so far, never mind transmog, I'd even go so far as saying that I wish that there were no such thing as like soulbound equipment. I'm not saying it should be, you know, just free to pass along whoever. But instead of binding it, it's like soulbound, that it just becomes account bound. And you can pass to other characters. Now, in a world like World of Warcraft used to be, where they wanted you to level up and gear up alts because of they wanted you just playing the game more, then I could go with that. But now that there's enough to do on one character, to the point where you don't really have time for alts unless you're basically playing this game all the time, I'd maybe even think about doing that. I suppose the argument against it would be that top guilds that do split runs and stuff like that would abuse the process, because they just keep passing their equipment to another character for doing split runs, and all their characters would be really well geared. Maybe that'd be one thing now. But certainly in terms of transmog, I don't know why that restriction exists. Again, it's one of these questions that never seems to be asked. No one ever seems to ask these questions about, you know, restrictions on transmog gear and stuff like that. I think Blizz learned their lesson on X-Pac being alt unfriendly. Think they'll change the BFA. I think they've learned a number of things in Legion, which is why I find it harsh to sometimes... I've sometimes criticised Blizzard most in Legion when they've actually improved something. But it's usually the criticism comes from the fact that it shouldn't have needed improving because it was so obvious in the first place. You know, but at least they have. They have improved quite a lot of this. I think most of the things that were wrong with Legion have at some point been improved. It's just that some of you feel shouldn't have needed it. They should have been dealt with at a much earlier stage. And even when maybe they could have argued that you couldn't really tell without it going live, it still took a long time. Yeah, I agree with this one as well. Blizzard pays an employee a couple $100 to make a pet mount and then sell hundreds or thousands. I don't think they'd sell millions of them. But the thing is, that's why I don't understand why they don't do more of it. Like I keep saying, I'll say it again. Like Elder Scrolls Online, every now and then, it's quite regular as well. There'll be something available on their online store, cosmetic, a pet or a mount or both, or a hat or something that's only out for a limited time. And it's like you get it now or you don't get it at all. Sometimes they even just give it away. It's not even don't even cost you anything. Like a couple of weeks ago, there was a pet. All you had to do was log in. You got the pet. I know Star Wars have done that as well every now and then. Although with them, you have to be subscribed as well. But generally speaking, it's just like log in. Maybe with an active subscription if it was WoW, obviously. And you get this thing. Or they just produced them on the online store. And as you say there, the amount of money they would make from that would easily outstrip the cost of the artist. You could have a team of artists whose job it is just to make like assets, mounts and pets that are only available for a limited time. And that's your lot. You either buy it in the next... It's like each month maybe. This is January's stuff. If you don't buy it in January, you cannot get it again. Maybe they allow it on the black market and auction house after a year or something. But there's no guaranteed way to get it again. The artifact weapon was the biggest issue in Legion, I thought. Let's look at the counterpoint here. Don't think the artifact weapon was a big deal. Grinding AP at the start was a little more annoying. Definitely manageable. I do think it was a big deal, though, whether you think it was good or bad. Because I know there are a lot of raiders that have stopped raiding simply because of having to do things outside of raids. Like, it's always been the case that guilds generally don't like to have too many guild loggers. You know, people who just log on for raid and then when the raid's over, they pretty much go away. They'll occasionally pop on now and then just to do whatever they need to do to get their consumables and stuff. But they're largely only online for the raids. Now, you know, that's a little bit antisocial. But you have people like that. Those people haven't really been able to exist in Legion. So they've effectively stopped playing. Which And some of them were very good players. So it hurts the raiding community, and it hurts Blizzard because they're losing subscriptions. So the compulsion to do this, I understand why they've done it, but the compulsion to do it, I think, was a mistake. I think just having enough content, they just needed to have enough content coming out, which they've got. And there needs to be rewards for doing it. I understand that as well. There's no point in just saying, well, there's content. There was content in WoD, technically, for a time anyway. But it was never good right from the start. Because the rewards were just considered crap. Let's have a look. I'm missing out here. They couldn't possibly make 2 separate starting zone stories of BFA and make it out unfriendly, could they? We'll have to see how alts are treated in BFA. The main thing will be, do they stop any like artificial restrictions on alts? Like, if something can be account-wide, it should be. Like, unlocking, for example, Court of Stars and Arcway at the start was not account-wide. It relatively quickly was made account-wide, but it wasn't at the start, and it should have been. That's obvious. So things like that, yeah, they should have been. Maybe too complex, but you would love more modular gear sets to purchase. Assemble your own gear for unique appearances. Well, that sort of thing is certainly what people would like. It might be a bit too difficult to do with what is now quite an old game. But I think they could do more than they are doing. And one of those guild wanted me to grind 4 different tanks. Oh, I wasn't even thinking of that so much. I mean, that's just an issue with split raiding. I was just thinking in terms of having to do your raiding and even on one character, go out and farm AP and also do the content, be on every couple of days at least to do emissary caches to get your chances of legendaries. You know, when you added it up, it's a significant amount of time. You were sometimes asking people to spend as much time or more playing the game than they were raiding. Like, the raiding was like, for some people, it used to be like 90% of their online time. And now it was going to have to be like 50% at most. Guys, you don't think people should be able to just log into raid? You should have to do things outside of raids. Well, you do have to do things outside of raids in Legion, and it's cost us a lot of raiders, a lot of experienced and effective raiders as a result of it. So, I mean, Blizzard, you know, Legion would subscribe to your point of view, but the bottom line is it's lost them a lot of subscribers, and it's lost us as raiders a lot of potential recruits. I'm not sure it is bad for the game, like, because even though like guilds traditionally didn't like a lot of people doing that because of the unsociable aspect of it, we can't really, you know, there's a lot of unsociable aspects to WoW. LFR, the fact you can just queue up for dungeons and basic raids is fairly unsociable. The fact that you can just do everything else solo is fairly unsociable. That's just the nature of an MMO these days. Start of Legion, you created about 7 mains, got the first legendary. If it's not as expected, to delete and remake. I know there were ones in top guilds who would roll multiple of the same class, and whichever one got the best legendaries was their main. But yeah, I think, like Axman say, that it will be a much more common theme that people should just be able to play what aspects of the game they want. I mean, that was the argument for bringing in multiple modes of raiding, for example. The fact that people should just have different difficulties to suit their commitment and ability. So the same thing should then apply if someone wants to do like progress raiding, mythic raiding even. They were able to do it in the past, and now they're not. And for some people, it's not even just that they can't be bothered. Some people just don't have the time to do lots of other things as well. I mean, I've sometimes struggled. And I think there's a difference, guys, between having something you can do and having something you have to do. It's a bit like, was it in MOP? I think it was MOP, where as part of the legendary quest line, you had to win a couple of battlegrounds, specific battlegrounds. I think there were ones that were new in MOP. I didn't appreciate that. I didn't like that at all. And it may well be that PvP players didn't appreciate having to do LFR or some form of raiding in order to get the legendary for themselves as well. Like, I think there are people who just identify as PvE players, like myself, when it comes to this game, and some who will identify as PvP players. Even I think anyone who does that in WoW doesn't have a massive amount to complain about because it's clearly not a PvP game, but still, it should potentially cater for those. There was a point when I did do pet battles in MOP just to get the charms. I got so sick of dailies, I decided I'd rather pet battle than do dailies. That's the only time I've really done it. Oh, and I did it at the start of WoD just to get rid of that carrot from my garden. But there is, in Legion, there is absolutely plenty to do. So much to do that you don't really have time to spend on alts, as I say, unless either you're not spending much time on any one character or you're just spending lots of time on the game full stop. No, Fraser, indeed. I imagine a full-time workload and a family would not really allow you to keep up with mythic raiding these days. Yes, yeah, you get the essences with your first battleground win of the day. In fact, I mean, they could just make it simply the first battleground win of the year, and I still won't get any from that source. I'm not planning on doing battlegrounds. I'm certainly not planning on doing battlegrounds and expecting to win. Unless I wonder if it has to be a random one or whether you can just pick one as well. Because I think when I used to do battlegrounds, occasionally it used to be useful to do battlegrounds they had these things called call to arms where you used to get extra experience from them. So it's actually a bloody good way of leveling up. People keep talking about, oh, you know, do invasions to level characters up. No, you used to do bloody Alterac Valley on those call to arms weekends. You used to get loads of experience. But Alterac Valley is the only one as Alliance that I would do and have any hope of winning. The other one's just potluck. For scenarios like the legendary questline from MOP or even getting certain appearances for artifacts in Legion, it would be great if they would require, let's say, either a heroic Argus kill or 10 rated battleground wins. Leave the player to decide what they'd like to do. Yes, if there was a choice, PvP or PvE. They tried that a little bit in WoD, didn't they, with the Apexis Daily. There'd be like a PvP option and a PvE option or something. You drop from top 100 kill to top 500 just because of the alt requirement required. Yeah, there's a lot of guilds now will require you effectively have 2 characters, one for split runs, and some, you know, maybe even a bit more. I think you're probably talking well within top 50 before anyone requires you to have 2 alts though. but it is increasingly common. There are some that don't at all, though. You know, it's just one of those things that gives you an advantage. Split raids in a tier give you a big advantage because it allows you to get all that tier gear really quickly and easily. As well as trinkets, I suppose, as well, and relics. But certainly tier. I mean, it made a big difference when we did it. Like, we didn't do it for Nighthold in the guild I was in at the time. And it took me a month to get my Conqueror. And then we did it, we split ran Tomb of Sargeras, and I got it within like a week. So I think in the second week, I got my 4-piece. So it's a big old difference. And I still don't even have 4-piece now after however long in tier 21. Admittedly, that's partly because I'm being very choosy, because I've got to be choosy for it to be better than my tier 20 set. And again, the guild I'm in now, we don't do split runs either. In fact, I was having a little look. I did my first Antorus run on something that's not my Paladin on Friday, where the guild just did a pug. Someone in the guild arranged a pug. So I went on my road, just normal. Fearing, I had terrible luck with coins and everything. I was getting bits of loot. It wasn't the amount of loot I was getting that was bad. It was not good stuff. I didn't get any tier. Coined every tier boss, got no tier. And I was fearing getting a really nice trinket like Amanthul's on Argus for this rogue I hardly ever play. Didn't, of course. So that was actually a relief in many ways. But I didn't do very well. I don't think I did very well on it, actually. It was difficult for me to tell because there were a lot of people better geared than me. Again, because I've not played it much. I'm not terribly well geared. But then I saw in the hotfixes, I don't know whether it's an overall buff or just a buff to certain playstyles. Because I've seen Mutilate damage increased by 20% because it's Assassination I play. Because, you know, it's easy to pick up. There's a couple of things buffed. There's also a couple of things... No, there's a few things buffed. Deadly Poison's been buffed by 15%. And there's one trait being buffed, one being nerfed. So I don't know. It looks like overall it might be a buff. I don't know though. I wonder if I'd do any better if I did it again this Friday. But I think that's the first bit of class balancing changes we've seen since Antorus went live, unless I'm misremembering something. Because previous ones have just been bug fixes. You're still waiting for the day that Outlaw becomes viable. You might be waiting a bit. Maybe in BFA. I think they need a better way of it working, though. I think they probably need to go back to the drawing board on that one. They'll probably painted themselves in a corner, though. Well, you know, it's not... Luck isn't a good thing to be reliant upon. You need to be fairly consistent, especially when you're doing progress. That was always the thing that annoyed me in WoD. Iron Maidens, I remember in Blackrock Foundry. So I'd go up on... Was it the second boat or something? Maybe the second and the third, maybe. Second and third, I think. But there's one particular boat. I think it might have been the second boat. It might have been the third one, though. I forget. But and at the time, Rets were very RNG based. It was just, you know, it couldn't be helped. It was the nature of their set bonuses and their toolkit. And some goes, we'd kill the ads we needed to do in plenty of time. And lo and behold, I'd be top of ad damage then. But sometimes we wouldn't. And that's when I'd be like basically bottom of ad damage. And it was just purely and simply because there was a very short window. Like over the course of a fight, it sort of evens out. You know, it's normally distributed. But in a very short window, sometimes you'd be very lucky with your procs. Sometimes you'd be very unlucky. And that lack of consistency made it very difficult. Outlaw and Survivor could use some reworks. Yeah, I'm not really sure because I've not really played Survival except when I was leveling my hunter. But survival can get very good results. That's the thing. That's what. Like, the thing is, I don't think survival would be top of their priority list because it's not a weak spec. It just requires quite a lot of practice and skill to get the best out of it. Also, excuse me. Also, it's not awfully essential that hunters be melee. But maybe that's just my thinking and not Blizzard's thinking. You know, it's a bit annoying that we've, you know, yet again had an expansion where another melee class was added, because that's effectively what happened with hunters. So, you know, we've had an extra class that can be melee without any extra ranged options. But Outlaw, yeah, I mean, it's hardly been a success. Again, I still don't really get why they had to change the name and stuff to do. I don't know what this pirate theme thing was about. They should have just kept it as combat. They could have changed things up still. They could have made it as much as it is now. But I haven't played my Outlaw or my Rogue for quite a while. I think the last time I played it actually was probably just... I played it a bit in alpha. But then... I like the grappling hook, basically. But I think the last time I probably played it when it went live was just to get the weapons, the artifact weapons. And then I think I probably switched to Assassination. But Murthus, absolutely, yeah, he says, unless you're really hardcore, you might as well play Outlaw if you enjoy it. It depends at what level you're playing, of course, then. It depends where, you know, higher up the curve, you're going to have less chance of being able to get anything effective out of a weak spec. Further down, really doesn't matter so much. You'll just be better than other people and make it work. Grappling hook and Shuriken Storm are going to be baseline. Just for Outlaw, I hope you mean, not rogues in general. But I'm not sure we've really heard anything, because I haven't seen Blizzard say anything. And until the alpha goes, or beta, whatever they call it, goes, like, opens up so people get to do it with no NDAs, we're not going to know. So the first thing we'll see on it at all is probably going to be from Preach. You know, when he gets invited in, he'll do his little videos. Maybe Outlaw will be one of the first ones he does. Yeah, it is indeed. At the moment, Battle for Azeroth stuff is pure speculation. Some people may read a little bit too much into what was at BlizzCon, but I still think that was just a quick fix to allow people to play the BFA content without artifact weapons. You know, you can't just, like, because of the nature of artifact weapons or the ability to give us, you can't just take artifact weapons off people and expect them to be able to play the class as is. They need, well, some more than others, mucking about with, because everyone gets new abilities from them. I mean, even, as I say, even when it does go, and I'm surprised there's still been no announcement about that as well. I was expecting it to be very soon in the new year, but that's obviously not happening either. Very odd, unless I'm keeping an eye on stuff now, because Tuesday being a reset day in North America, occasionally they come out with a little bit of news. I mean, again, I've got to try and think in terms of what time it is. What is it, about 10 o'clock in the morning in California, I think. So there's potentially all day. Although I suppose if it's information about that, that's not necessarily the thing that would come out and... Oh yeah, 8 hours behind. Sorry, yeah. Yes. Not necessarily the thing that comes out on a Tuesday anyway. Maybe that's more last thing on a Friday before they go over for the weekend. Quick throw the news out and then go home where we don't have to read Twitter for 2 days. But no one's saying anything at all. Oh my god. So all we've had at the moment is some balancing to what? Balanced druids, marksman, hunters. Oh no, that's a bug fix. Balanced druids, assassination rogues. What is this? So they've had one ability, balanced druids, this is nerfed fairly substantially, but then 2 others fairly substantially buffed. Is that again just to keep it basically the same, but to avoid you overusing a particular ability they don't want you to? I don't know anything about balanced druids. Wax and wane damage bonus per stat reduced to 6% from 25%, but Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath damage increased by 8%. Oh. I imagine that's just one of those typical ones they do to, like I say, change the way people play the spec. I'm still waiting for them to say that they're removing the Retribution passive for Ret Paladins. That's something I can do without. Impossible to balance us with that bloody thing. Because that, I mean, I still need to do the Antorus companion guide for Rets. I think my main tip for the damage guide would be join a guild where people die a lot. Oh, they want the owl to stand still, is that what it's about? Well, we're absolutely balanced about the restoration buff. You couldn't do anything else. It's such a massive amount of damage. That's what I mean about Blizzard. You know, they have improved quite a lot of things, but some of the things should have been bleeding obvious. Like the retribution passive is a classic example, except they haven't improved it yet, of them saying, oh, this is just for flavour. Do you know what? When I first got into Alpha, it was 100% damage buff. It was 100% damage buff. That was Retribution going to be. Then they took it down to 50%. Then it went down to 20%, where it is now. So they actually just thought, oh, do you know what? A little bit of fun. Someone dies, we all get a bit mad, and we do a bit of extra damage. Won't that be fun? And they said, it's not going to affect anything. We're not taking it into account when we're balancing you. Which obviously they did. They couldn't help it because it's such a massive amount of damage. Then they eventually said, they conceded a long time into Legion, oh yeah, it does have a significant effect, but people don't game it. People don't take advantage of it. Really? See you later, Pinky. But anyway, that's a job for the... I don't think there'll be any serious class changes now. Evening, Man of War. On the easy farm bosses, you sometimes have your healers not heal our top DPS. So Rets can do some damage during Crusade. That's not very nice. I don't wish people dead. I'm just not very disappointed when they do, especially during Wings. Actually, my guild leader killed me a couple of days ago. on Eonar. Wasn't happy. How do you think? Will some of the classes... Some change the classes in future patch? It depends. They'd have... I don't know what they're going to do. They've obviously got to do something. There is a class development team. There's a team of people whose job it is to keep buggering about with class balance. So, obviously, they will do something because they're paid to do it. I just hope there's been a bit of a change in philosophy. Now, that change in philosophy could be triggered by a couple of things. One, by lessons learnt from Legion, hopefully. Two, the fact that Celestalon has gone, bye-bye, might also change the balance of opinion within that team. We'll have to see. Divine Shield returned to 2 minutes. Well, it wasn't 2 minutes. It was 2.5 minutes. But I don't think we're going to be getting divine intervention. Again, quite difficult to know. But I get the impression that they don't want us to have divine intervention. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, when you used to bubble. And you did 50% less damage in your bubble. Yes, I recall that. That was less than fun. I think that was during TBC, wasn't it? Hi, Sleepy. Do I think with the essence dropping in greater quantities, the upgrade token will be made? Well, they've said things are going to be made more expensive, so I don't need to think about that one. I will read you out what they said, in fact. Will also be dramatically increasing both the number of essences required to purchase tokens and the rate at which you gain them in patch 7.3.5. So they are good in exactly the same line that they said they were going to increase the amount that drop. They have said that they're going to increase the cost as well, which is okay. The reason they're doing that is just they don't want us stockpiling. Again, which is just being a bit petty to me. But still, they don't want us stockpiling a load and then buying a load of tokens and getting suddenly loads of legendaries. That's all. Well, they said the new token is more expensive. The new token can't be more expensive because it doesn't exist at the moment. So the new token will be as expensive as it has ever been when it comes out. Because it's not there right now. They're just doing it to stop people stockpiling. But I would still argue, unless you've got some legendaries that need upgrading and you use those legendaries, I would say stockpile away. Quite frankly. I mean, let's say... I can't speak for other classes. Well, it doesn't matter what classes. Let's say you've got a 970 legendary still, but it's a really crap one. You'll never use it. I would say at the moment, don't bother upgrading it. I would say stockpile. What's the harm in stockpiling? Just because it's less effective to stockpile now than if they didn't make that change to the cost of things, doesn't mean to say it's still not a good thing to do. Oh yeah, the tokens are bot. They don't want you giving them to alts. It says the tokens are bind on pickup because we don't want to overly encourage players to farm essences on alt characters in order to feed legendary items to their mains. Even though in reality it'd be the other way around, wouldn't it? You'd be farming it on your main to give it to your alts is what you'd actually be doing. But so that's why, yeah, the tokens are going to be bind on pickup. Even though it doesn't make any sense, because presumably the token you... Well, they could have just made it, shall we say, that the token you buy would be for your class. As in specifically for your class. But they've just made it the token that is determined by what it is when you open it. The legendaries that drop after the patch are 1,000, so what's the purpose of saving them? Because some people, myself included, still have had a lot of legendaries before the patch. So there's still a lot of 970s to upgrade. Or a few anyway. So that's the purpose of saving them. Because I haven't been farming all the essences I could have every week. Because a lot of the legendaries I still have to upgrade are ones that I don't really ever intend to use. So you're playing for the monk, and Blizzard doesn't make big changes till Pandaria. Because they said that players will not be playing in that... Let's try and decipher this. Oh yeah, Windwalker Monk. Well, it depends what spec of monk you mean. Like our Windwalker Monk's beasting it. Absolutely beasting the damage. Well, hang on, where was it? Can't find it now. Can't find the name of the token, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's bound. It's bound on. It's soul bound anyway, so it doesn't matter. If you purchase and use a token on a character that already has the available legendaries for their class, you'll be given a random BOA token for another class. So if you have a main that has all the legendaries, then you would be able to get one. And I suppose that would allow you to target one of your alts that you actually have, which is better than the system that exists at the moment, which is where you can, you know, you've got all the legendaries on, say, a warrior, and you have a mage alt, and you get your next legendary, it's a token for a priest, and you go, oh, great, I ain't got a priest. Thanks. Whereas if it's bound on account, presumably that means you could just give it to any old character. Although, does that mean that the ones that they'll also do that? They should do, shouldn't they? For the ones you get naturally anyway. You wish they would remove the rep requirement for the Balance of Power quest line. I don't know about that one. Like, I mean, I think the concept of doing something like Balance of Power on multiple characters means there's a certain amount of time going to be spent on it anyway. And I don't think rep's the hardest thing to get, but again, it's one of those things. Like, I don't think that's the most time-consuming part of the Balance of Power, which I still haven't done. I haven't done that yet. Maybe I ought to get around to doing that sometime. But at the same time, I am very much in favour of removing anything at all that hinders alts. I don't really get it. In an expansion where there's so much to do that you don't even have the time to spend much on alts, unless you are playing a silly amount of World of Warcraft, what's the point in putting things in place, barriers in place? So there's nothing different about the legendary system after the patch than before. Well, that's just spiteful then, isn't it? So people are still going to carry on from their raids and, you know, world bosses and emissary caches getting tokens that could be completely useless, knowing full well that there is a token in-game that you could just send to a character and it will definitely be for that class. Oh, I think rep should only be a grind on one character. I think it should be account-wide. Certainly. Not to the point where you should just be able to, like, do some reputation stuff on different targets. The token you buy is random class if you have a legendary too. I don't think that's what it says. It says here, you will be given a random BOA token for another class. So, oh, okay. I see. Well, that's all right. That's still spiteful then. That's disappointing. Well, I won't bother saving up essences on my paladin then, sod it. If I can't even target. Because even I have some character. Well, actually, do I? Well, I technically don't have. I have a priest on Sylvanas. I'm not bringing that over. I was thinking of starting a new priest at some point. Oh, hi, Sanin. Thank you very much. Well, you can end up with 2 legendaries per week anyway. You can end up, I mean, some people, if you're really lucky, you can get, you know, you can have bad luck protection built up and then you just use a Blingtron, get a legendary, and then you kill a raid boss and get a legendary straight after or something. These things have been happening. But I mean, I agree that without, I don't, you know, it's not fun to keep having to repeat the same content if it's not absolutely essential. One of our guys got 3 legendaries in our Taurus run a couple of weeks back. He was happy. Well, if they were decent legendaries, you only need 2 if they're actually any good. It's actually quite bizarre that the my Demon Hunter still only has 1 legendary. Not that it's been unlucky, but it just seems odd because it's the second character I ever leveled in Legion, because I was using it for split runs, but then I went right off and I have basically not used my Demon Hunter since Emerald Nightmare. Your luckiest you've ever been was to get 2 Beast legendaries 2 days in a row. Yeah, I got, you know when they brought in this idea of you have a much higher chance to get your first legendary and then a not quite so high but still a pretty high chance to get your second. And that was when I just dinged my monk and my hunter hadn't been dinged very long. Or was it the other way around? And I can't remember, but on one of them, I think it was the monk. Maybe it was the hunter. But anyway, basically, I played a bit on those 2 characters that weekend. Not loads, not doing loads of stuff, but just a bit of LFR, stuff like that. And I ended up getting 2 legendaries on one of them and 1 on the other. And I thought, oh, they're not kidding, you get 2 really quickly. But then it didn't happen again on any other character for ages. So I think I was just very, very lucky at that particular point. I can't remember which one got the 2 now. I think it might have been the hunter. Now that I think about it, because I don't think I even have 2 legendaries on my monk. I'm not certain. What do I think about the tertiary stat system? I don't think too much about it at all. I mean, like leech avoidance and socket, I'm okay. I'm okay with that concept. It's Titanforge I have an issue with. Obviously, I mean, the secondary stats in particular are what makes Amonthul's vision particularly strong as well. So it's not just... Obviously, you can sim Amonthul's vision and it'll look pretty strong. And then you can try and factor in the Pantheon effect. That looks pretty good as well. But the survival implications of having a load of leech proc every now and then is pretty impressive too. You never complete the first quest for Legion, so you have a permanent Orgrimmar health zone with a 5-minute cooldown. See, I used to do something similar. Yeah, what was it? In vanilla, it used to be quite common to do what was it now, with the Furbolgs in Winterspring, or between Felwood and Winterspring. So there was a quest where you got an item that turned you into a Furbolg. But what people would do is they'd have the quest, get the item, but they wouldn't complete it because then they would lose the item. So they could just turn themselves into a Furbolg. Although I think you can now get a toy to do that anyway. And what I used to do during Children's Week is where you get the quest to show the orphan slave around. I used to just not complete it. And then I'd have a pet orphan for that whole period of time. Be wherever I was whenever I brought my whistle out. Leech is pretty good as well. Leech and Avoidance are both quite good. Obviously Indestructible, not so much of a... You're not so happy about getting that. Hot fix that way, but I think the bad luck protection wasn't resetting and everyone was getting 2 legendaries very fast. I'm not sure when you're talking about, Fraser, with that. I know there was an issue right at the start of Legion. That's not what I'm talking about. There was an issue right at the start of Legion where Blizzard kept denying it as well, where people who got 1 legendary found that there was a very high chance of getting a 2nd legendary really quickly. Unfortunately, I did not benefit from that. I mean, anecdotal evidence was pretty strong for it. I mean, that's all it was from my point of view. You know, most of the people that I saw get a legendary quite early on did get a 2nd bloody quickly. Not all, though. Not everyone. With as much as your guild wipes Indestructible is pretty amazing. No, there's actually on quite a lot of the fights, because you don't always take durability damage. You know, you can. There's usually ways to kill yourself without, you know, having to pay lots of repair costs. And even if you do, it's not that much really these days. Well, Kithril, it's quite interesting you should say that. I've got scripts for a few vlogs I need to be doing. And one of which, because we discussed this last week, didn't we? That when I was talking about item level, and a load of you basically said, I haven't done any mythic, but I've got 10 more item levels than you. And I went, oh, really? But I simmed a couple of you and found that my DPS sims about 50% more. So there's like people, some of you, like with maybe 10 item levels on me, but simming for way less damage, obviously for DPS classes, way less damage. So item level isn't really an effective measure of the overall effectiveness of gear. It's the only measure that's in game. Anything else has to come from third-party software. But item level, yeah, item level is a very poor system for judging the effectiveness of gear. And it won't improve in the next expansion, because you can see why they're scrapping tier. They're not really scrapping tier, they're just changing to a different system. The Azerite armor is the new tier. It just works a bit differently, that's all. WoW Armory doesn't contain Crucible data. No, it doesn't. But I simmed them and also simmed myself from the same thing. So if we assume that we all had bog standard Crucible traits, and also I don't think anyone's going to have their character suddenly improve their DPS by 50% with Crucible traits. But I pulled my own from my armory as well, just to make it all fair. See you later, Kithril. Have to go back and item restore Mythic TOS gear. I have only ever once had to do an item restore, and it was a little embarrassing. Someone traded me, in my previous guild, a BOE that dropped in Tomb of Sargeras, Mythic Tomb of Sargeras. Unfortunately, they traded it to the wrong officer because I'm an enchanter. So when stuff gets passed to me, I don't usually disenchant it straight away, but I don't have a lot of bag space. So every now and then I have a bit of a purge. I was disenchant, and disenchant. I thought, oh, I've just disenchanted that piece of gear. It was quite a nice piece of gear as well. So I had to do an item restore. Azerite armor, from what you've seen, is going to be a nightmare. Not only may we have multiple sets of gear, you'll need to run dungeons to get your BIS items in certain slots. And like every expansion, some dungeons are hardest to run and people avoid them. Yes, that is absolutely what I take from it. From what we know so far, which of course is subject to change, but that is what I take from it. That we're going to want multiple sets of Azerite armor, and yes, there's going to be, you're going to want to, for your particular class or spec, you're going to want to target certain places to get what will be your best pieces. And if it happens to be, I mean, the worst thing, on one level you can just say, oh, what if it happens to be an unpopular dungeon or something? That's one thing. There is a worst case scenario. What if it happens to be a dungeon that your class is pretty bad at? Then even if the dungeon is fairly popular, you still might not find it easy to get groups for it because your class is really bad at it. Hang on a minute. No, it can't Titan Forge. But you know, it doesn't need to, because you still need like I'm just trying to think now. I don't know with item level, like it could work. I suppose some of this is still up for debate. It could work like the Pantheon trinkets. For example, they were 940 no matter what mode you got them in. That would then be okay if they're of a fixed item level. But what if they're not? Just because it won't Titan Forge doesn't mean to say they're of a fixed item level. So what if, let's say, there's a particular piece of Azerite armor from a particular dungeon, but what if the item level is still dependent upon what level of that dungeon you complete? Remembering that they said that Azerite armor is going to be something that's relevant throughout the expansion. So what if completing it on a +10 gets you a higher item level than, say, completing it on just a +2? Or completing it on mythic in a raid gives you a higher item level version than in the heroic. So it doesn't need to Titan Forge to still be a bit of a pain in the arse to farm. You've been lucky with your relics up until most recent fire relic, but it was such a high item level you were stuck with so-so first and second tier talent and BIS for your third. Well, that still doesn't sound too bad, does it? A high item level relic and you got a mediocre one for your second and a BIS one for the third. I'll take that. My fire relics are actually the ones that misbehave the most. I tend to get quite poor traits on them. I have a completely useless one. But, you know. I don't tend to have much luck with relics. I don't think in any of the tiers this expansion have I had a Titan Forge relic. You know, I've sometimes, I think the most I've had is a 10 item level upgrade, I think, on the baseline version. So you were playing down with gear but only had heroic TOS gear, so you had to play. Oh well. No, I'm not, yeah, I'm not interested in passing logs, but you obviously do want to compete with the people in your raid, of course. Can you imagine farming out Azerite armor with the Mythic Plus system? Not only do you need to get the right dungeon, you need to find the right level of key. You've run Upper Kara countless times expansion, never seen the Eye of Command trinket drop once. I think I had it once and I gave it away, although it wasn't a very high item level version. Well, I mean, that's my fear. I think people are saying, oh, because it doesn't Titan Forge, it won't be that bad to get hold of it. But I'm not so sure. Just because it doesn't Titan Forge doesn't mean to say the item level is not determined by the level at which you're completing the content that rewards it. You know, I think there's a lot of people, because there's a lot of gaps in information whenever Blizzard do one of these expansion announcements, there has to be gaps, because a lot of it they won't even know themselves. You know, people always think that the project's much more advanced than it really is. Do people remember when they announced, the first BlizzCon where they talked about Warlords of Draenor, and they had that silhouette with the so-called warlords, and they said even that graphic was done with basically the same character. There was only like Grom or something done, and they had to just put spiky bits on different versions of the same model to make it look like that. It's always a Blue Peter toilet roll and sellotape job when they're doing these announcements. They know nothing. They're just bluffing. So we don't actually know how it's going to work. But yeah, people will just fill in the gaps and make assumptions. What time is it here? It is 8:30 in the evening. At least with tier, you're guaranteed to run it every week on multiple difficulties with your guild. With dungeons, it's not the case. No, it's not. I mean, that is why. Should I have a look, actually? Because I keep talking about... I mean, I got away with it this week. I asked if anyone wanted to do a plus 15 in the guild after the raid last night, and I immediately got takers. It was great. I mean, it took ages for us actually to go anywhere, but that's fine. At least we did go somewhere. So I got that done. Because I was worrying, if I don't get it done before the weekend, I always get a bit worried that I might not get it done. Or have to... I mean, last week I think I had to pug it. Although I had Fardian helping with that. But I can't normally get into pugs. And possibly the part of the reason for that is my Mythic Plus score. Because I've hardly done any. Doesn't seem to update. When was this last updated? Needs to be updated. It's missing one. What score are you supposed to need now on Mythic Plus? On WoW Progress this is, by the way, not Raid.io. I don't know how that works. Whatever it is, mine is significantly lower. No, it doesn't seem to want to update. Because I did Darkheart Thicket last night, so that should be on there. But at the moment, it only recognises that I've done 4 Mythic Pluses. Whereas, of course, I've done more than that. But I only do about 1 a week. So it will take a long time before I've got a score for every single one of them. May have to make the top 100 leaderboard. Oh, well, if it's on the realm, shall we have a little look? I'm not even in the top 2,000. I didn't actually copy my information across from the previous realm, though. Maybe I should do that. Because I don't rule out the possibility that I may need to get into a pug at some point. Although I don't necessarily know that it was much better then. Alright, let's have a look at what scores then. Oh, I see what you mean. I've got you. Well, right, we'll have a look anyway. Well, there's people around about 2,500. I've got a score of about 800. So there you go. If you tank or heal, you don't need to score. I suppose also if you've got the key, you don't need to score, unless people who joined the pug check you out first. To get access to talk to in Discord, need YouTube page. Well, you can find me on Patreon, just send me a private message. That works for anyone. It's just patrons have priority. But, you know, I don't always get absolutely rammed with messages. You're asking me for the best tactics on anything. I haven't got a clue. Right, on Eonar, the best tactic for me, is to be in the right place, but to make sure that there's a healer about as well. I've got... I mean, it depends what you want to do. If you're like, I mean, I don't whore on ads or anything like that. Obviously, if there's ads about, I'm going to Divine Storm through them, but I'll still be on the priority ad. Yeah. So the tactic's the same for everyone. It also depends what role you have on the ship, the praxis, because I only experienced getting the green orb, which is actually really nasty. I'm not going to say it's the worst because I haven't experienced the others. But the green one's pretty nasty because it means everything gets targeted on you. You're just constantly getting spammed with every ability, which is very unpleasant. Which also keeps frequently taking me out of combat, or not combat, but out of melee range of the thing I need to hit, because I can't just stand there. And if you move out of range of a healer, then you're getting spammed with all this damage. You can't keep yourself alive. And you'll just die. So yeah, you have to try and keep yourself near a healer and keep begging for heals. That's my only tip on Eonar. Make sure you know where you are, be in the right place a little bit early. Don't bother whoring on ads unless they're there anyway. Oh, and if you do have to take the green debuff, take Pride as, actually. Yeah. That's what it's worth taking Pride as for that. Because there's no point in taking Chain of Thrain, for example, because you're not going to get a load of use out of wings anyway. Because ads don't last very long usually. They certainly don't last a full duration of Crusade. So what's the point of taking a belt that only works during Crusade, when for a lot of that Crusade's duration you're not going to do any damage? So you can absolutely afford to take Pride as. Yeah, Pride as with the green crystal. I would strongly suggest that. And just be alive to the situation, especially towards the end, because, you know, it might be that there's... I always forget the names of the bloody ads. Like Purifier or something that you need to kill, which might be some place off. And obviously make sure you've got your extra action button key bound so that you can use the wings effectively. Oh, the legend. I mostly use the legendary braces in Mythic Plus if I don't fancy my chances. Except I was a little bit too negative yesterday. We did. We had a Dark Heart Thicket key. Someone had a plus 18, but someone else, like, you know, didn't fancy doing the plus 18. I think he just didn't trust our tank, who was actually my fellow Ret in the guild, who went tank. I don't know why, because it was absolutely fine. But anyway, so this guy knocked it down to a 15, so we ended up just doing 15. But I equipped my braces anyway, because I don't always have the best of luck, especially in the first part of Dark Heart Thicket. And the first boss doesn't like me either. But I ended up not dying, so I thought, oh, well. So on the last boss, I took them off and put my belt back on. I could have been doing more damage. But the legendary braces, I can't think that I've used it on a raid boss recently. I mean, you could use, if you were really up against it. Like Pride as should help a bit. And again, you just have to try and keep yourself within range of a healer. But given that DPS isn't, you know, you're DPSing in shortish bursts, you could get away without using any damage in legendaries and just use Pride as and, yeah, cheat death. I'm just trying to think if even there'd be a case of speedy boots. Mostly you're alright getting around because of the wings that Eonar gives you. But I don't think there's any paladin specific advice really. All the nasty stuff is holy damage. Not holy, sorry, spell damage. So it's not like Bop does much good. High Lord. 26% haste is still more than I have at the moment. I wouldn't worry about that, but you still sim it. It is a question that Simmy may answer. But Soul of the High Lord is generally an effective legendary to use now. It doesn't take up a tier slot. Liadrin's Fury Unleashed isn't as effective this tier. Well, where I am in the fight and I come out of the ship, it's always just before it's the same time as I need to be on the top platform to deal with some ads coming there. So I just go to that top platform and hope a healer arrives fairly soon. Well, Soul of the High Lord has always been one of those sort of legendaries because it's proc based. It's the sort of thing that, you know, people who want to pass high will take anyway, just because it's one of that. That's what you do. If you want high ranks, you take very RNG based trinkets and legendaries and stuff. But so the High Lord is also Liadrin's Fury Unleashed is just straight up weaker this tier, just because of the way it works. You might end up wasting Holy Power as a result of it as well. That's another thing. Soul of the High Lord is useful both in and out of Crusade, and there's a bit of a, especially until you can only take 4 set tier 21, you're not going to be using Whisper of the Nathrazim, so that basically leaves you with not much of a choice. Soul would do even better with Whisper, so yeah, at the moment I'm not even using Whisper of the Nathrazim. But even when you, because when you sim, it'll take the overall thing. It won't give you a particularly lucky thing because it averages it out. And even then it sims significantly higher than Liadrin's for me. I mean, in theory you could use both. Liadrin's is quite nice because I think there's quite a bit of haste on it. Oh, if you go into the... Yeah, my sympathies would be with the people who have to go in the Eonar ship first because, I mean, I go in third, so I can't complain too much. Because it's after halfway through the fight, I think. Well, it must be, it's third. Or about... No, a bit over. Well, that's the thing with legendaries. It applies to any class as well. If you need to consider your balance of stats. That's why when you make any significant change to gear, it's always worth just re-simming. Sim for different durations as well, because different durations will have a different proportion of your DPS cooldown being used. And when you're talking about a legendary that only works during your DPS cooldown, obviously duration of fight has a fairly significant effect on how much damage it's likely to do as well. And sending also, I would like to get 4 set tier 21 at some point. Like, it would be helped, the whole process would be helped immeasurably if bloody mythic Eonar would drop some tier legs for me. Whether just dropping them for me or coining them, I don't care. But he's not doing. So I'll have to hope for a better luck next week. With procs, you're far better off tracking things like that yourself as well anyway. Like I use Tell Me When, you can get weak auras or something. Always know when you've got a proc of something, like in a part of the screen where you can quickly see it without obviously obscuring your view to important things. I mean, it is sort of, you know, when Blizzard do the shiny things around your character, that can be helpful. But like you say, it's not always consistent. They don't always do it for every proc you can have. I mean, I prefer using Tell Me When for class-based stuff because it's so easy to create stuff in it. I mean, people who know how to use weak orders, I'm sure will say the same thing, but it's a lot easier to learn how to use Tell Me When, which is basic, very easy, than it is for weak orders. So my weak orders tend to just be ones that are encounter-based, where someone else has done it. Or if it's class-based, I do have a couple of class-based weak orders. They tend to be ones where I don't know how to do it in Tell Me When. So I just go, you know, someone has made a single module. I would never get a whole suite of weak orders for class-based stuff because it's never going to be set up how you'd want it. Yeah, we have 4 people going the ship, but there's still 4 ships. Or, no, there's 1 ship, but there's 4 times you have to go into the ship. So that's 16 people needed altogether. It's not possible to do it with just 1 person. I can't do Whisper High Lord. It's not the best for me because I need my set bonuses. Four people 4 times. You crazy. More specifically, you would need 4 crazy people to do that, surely. I wouldn't fancy that. Can you even... Hold on. Can you even do that? Yeah, but does it? And what do the 4 people who do that think about the whole process? It's a bit like doing the pod and Tauren High Command, surely. You're okay with it as long as everyone else is doing it. As soon as not everyone else is doing it, then it's a bit like, why do I have to do it? Well, if it was a fight where we sort of wipe on it, I might potentially suggest it, except I know which poor muggins would end up being one of the 4 to go in. But thankfully, we don't tend to wipe on that boss. Now, if we could find a better way to do Portal Keep or Eonar, that would be a different matter, because we wiped on that a lot this week. Yeah, okay, you do that. Figured out in your guild that progression boss is required to derp early fight. I'm not sure that, you know, I'm not sure that that's ideal. Derping on a fight early before you can actually kill the boss. Although I wasn't happy that on Eonar this week, as I say, my guild leader got me killed on the kill. Normally, I'm absolutely fine with that fight. I don't die. It's all fine. All straightforward. And on the eventual kill, which took a long time this week, which bridge was it? 4th bridge, I think. No, was it even the 4th bridge? I think it was. It must have been fair, was it? Can't remember. But on one of the bridge where you have the red orbs and stuff. So I clipped one, which is not actually a disaster. Just like blessing of freedom and carry on. And then I'm getting pushed back and I thought, loads of people are at the boss and I'm thinking it's okay. Because normally at this point I've only just got over the bridge. So I'm thinking, where's the next orb going to spawn so I can avoid it. But then I was thinking that'll be fine. Because someone's going to interrupt any second now, surely, and that will stop it. But people didn't. And then I still thought it'd be fine. Because I thought, well, worst comes to worst. You know, I'll just auto-bubble. And I'll still be fine. Unfortunately, not only did the interrupts not happen very quickly. But my GM plays a Holy Paladin. Which is the only thing that can possibly cook me over like this. But my auto bubble didn't proc. And I'm there, you know, I'm streaming this. I'm thinking, what the hell? Why have I died? And the reason was due to something which should have been really obvious. Because it didn't do more than too much damage to beat my cheat death. And even if it did, your Divine Intervention would still proc and it didn't proc. And what had happened was, he'd put lay on hands on me. Never do. Never, ever, ever put lay on hands or blessing of protection on another paladin. So that's twice in the space of a week, basically, when a holy paladin has killed me from that same thing. Because when I was doing Mythic Plus last week in a pug, it was in Archway, and it was near the boss. Well, it was in the boss with all the arcane things with the shields and stuff. And I'm getting spammed with a load of arcane damage and not really getting heals in any serious sense. So I was just waiting for my health to go quite low, and then I was going to put lay on hands on myself. And then it went quite low, and then I suddenly noticed I had blessing of protection on me. I thought, this is spell damage, what good's that doing? But it's stopping me being able to heal myself because it puts forbearance on me. I can't use lay on hands on myself now. Thanks a lot. So yeah, I've been killed twice by holy paladins putting forbearance on me. Never, ever put forbearance on another paladin without their expressed wish. So yeah, I need to watch out for... Maybe I need to make myself a tell me when, a giant tell me when, that tells me when I've got forbearance. Preferably one that tells me who's responsible for it as well. Because yeah, it prevents a paladin being able to manage their own survival if you put forbearance on them. See, it used to be the case you could annoy warriors with Blessing of Protection, but now it allows you to attack from within it. So now the only people you can annoy with Blessing of Protection... In fact, there was a time when you could kill gnomes with Blessing of Protection. I remember those days in vanilla. It was fantastic. Now the only people you can kill with Blessing of Protection are paladins. I actually do have a Cancelora macro, but it wouldn't stop the forbearance. It's the forbearance specifically in my case that cocked me up. And I can't get rid of that. The other thing as well, with it being a holy paladin, the forbearance lasts longer. Lasts longer than mine. So, well, or you could send it to me and I could link it here. What the hell? So yeah, I think I need to mention that in future. No one put Blessing of Protection or lay on hands on me. Even if I look like I'm going to die, I won't. And if I do, it's my fault. Disgraceful. No, the WoW community's alright. It's fine. As long as you steer clear of pugs, it's all fine. Oh, and try and stay away from forums too. And then it's all fine. Actually, just try and stay away from people, and the community is no problem at all. Oh, what is this? Yeah, that's the thing, actually. Yeah, I need to have a look at changing sounds and thing. Someone produced a weak aura, which I could do a tell me when of, actually. I think I'm going to change it to that. They did, because one of the things that's cocking us up, or did cock us up on Kingaroth, is, I think it's decimation, where you get the red circle around you and have to bugger off. And there's a lot of, and I noticed on the first night, I did this a couple of times, I have to confess. Because I didn't make myself a notification to tell me when I've got it. So it's like, I was slow out. So he made a weak aura, which flashes up a big icon on it, which is absolutely fine. But it's always better with an audio signal on something really dangerous. And the audio sound it makes is very weak. So it needs beefing up. But I might just make myself a tell me when. And make it a horrendous siren sound when I get it. Or I might just modify the weak aura for the same thing. Because I can probably do that. Even though I've never taken the time to learn how to do weak auras, I can probably modify the sound of an established weak aura. And I still need, there is still a Ret specific weak aura I need to find that I used to have and forgot to copy across when I changed realms, which lets me know when my greater blessings are running low. If I put, at the moment I haven't really been needing it because I've been putting Blessing of Kings on myself. Because I'd normally put Blessing of Kings on attack, but they don't deserve it because one's a Brewmaster, the other's a Guardian Druid. And they abuse Blessing of Kings because they keep changing spec to eat. They want us to pug Heroic as we focus solely on Mythic. Well, I definitely want Mythic progression. You don't want to have to pug Heroic. No, I don't think anyone wants to pug. If you're a Mythic Raider at all. You download a suite of weak auras and edit them to your liking. Yeah, that's one way to do it as well. Well, you don't normally have a heroic night, do you? I mean, a heroic would probably take... How long would a heroic take now? A couple of hours? Oh, okay. No, did you? Yes. Okay. Let us have a look then. There we go. Hour and a half then. So, although people would have to be on for that one, it wouldn't take that long. So I think the only people active at the moment are the community managers at the moment on the NA forums. I don't think we're going to get any more announcements today. So if they are going to announce the release of beta, maybe it'll be a weekend thing, or maybe it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's not this week at all. It's the only thing I'm looking forward to at the moment, at least seeing it. Because the sooner it opens and I don't get a key, the sooner I can start begging someone till you let me have a key. But we've sort of come to 9 o'clock there. If anyone's got anything, I'll give obviously usual couple of minutes before we actually end. If anyone wants to throw anything else out, otherwise I will wrap this up and then get busy turning it into a video to stick onto YouTube. As well as get another video done for tomorrow. In fact, potentially I could try and get the 2 done tonight. One of them hopefully will be fairly quick. Okay, so thanks for coming on then. I will see, well, I'll be on tomorrow, obviously, with the guild raid again. Oh, streaming question, quick one, last one. You've got lofted ceilings that are about 20 feet up and getting an echo from your mic when streaming as a result. Do I have any suggestions to remedy this? What sort of mic do you have? Because I can't really, other than putting soundproofing stuff on your ceiling above. Oh. That should be okay then. I don't know. Because usually that's got, I mean, I've got a Blue Yeti. I don't know about the blackout bit. It's a different model maybe. And it's got different settings on it. So I've got the setting where it should only pick up sound really from directly, like where my mouth is basically. Occasionally it will pick up keys as well. But it shouldn't pick up anything from up there. But if it does, I don't know. You probably not. You might not be in a position where you can just stick soundproofing foam on your ceiling. But I would have thought that's the only thing you can do. So I don't know, I'm afraid. Unless, of course, it's just the way it is. Like, if your Yeti is like desktop based, so it's pointing up, maybe that's why it's picking it up. Mine is on a thing, so it's hanging down like that. And that would maybe help. I mean, I haven't got anyone bouncing around in my loft either, so that also helps. But if I did... But yeah, I mean, you... yes, I would have thought so. Or, oh, I don't know how effective this would be, setting up, like, I don't know if you can arrange any sort of cover over it with some soundproofing foam or something. And again, yeah, that's assuming, like Dave says there, that it's not possible just to adjust sensitivity or something. Yeah, if you hang it upside down, it might help a bit. Still got an hour left of work. Well, anyway, I'll call it there then. Good luck, everyone, in Antorus for this week. I shall see you later. Be back on tomorrow, as I say, streaming our guild raid when I'm in on bosses. So, good night.